someone with me, a friend that we're honored to have on our show, historian Dr. Lopez Mathews. How you doing today, sir?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
I'm okay. I mean, every time that we have the opportunity to attend an ASALH luncheon, it's always one for the culture.
Oh, yeah. I love attending this. It's great to see everybody dressed up and looking their best and coming to celebrate our history, which is so important.
Exactly. So, Dr. Mathews, what do you do?
So I am the manager of the Digital Production Center for the Howard University Libraries and the Moorland Spingarn Research Center. And so what I do is I digitize the historic records in Moorland Spingarn, manage the Digital Howard site, which is the institutional repository, and also manage scholarly communications for the libraries. And I'm also the history subject specialist for the library, so I purchase the history books for the library.
So how important is the repository at Moorland Spingarn? Because a lot of individuals, especially in our society now, since we've gone through this whole dumbing down phase, I believe individuals don't understand the importance of Moorland Spingarn, and most probably never heard of it. So can you please explain this facility to us?
Well, Moorland Spingarn is one of the largest repositories of materials on African Americans in the world. And as I was explaining to someone the other day, because they were talking about Moorland in relation to the New African American Museum, I was saying that it's special that Moorland is there because it's Black-owned.
Right.
And I think that there's something to be said for African Americans preserving their own history. And so that's why I look up to people like Dorothy Porter and Arturo Schomburg, people who recognize the importance of preserving Black history because it was important when no one else thought it was important.
Right.
Now everybody's trying to preserve Black history and buying collections, and they want, everybody wants to be in the business of Black history.
And that's very interesting that you say that there is a business of printing off and creating narratives, but not actually preserving the perspectives of Black people.
Oh, yeah.
So, this repository, I mean, a lot of African Americans believe that from slavery and after slavery, we have nothing, that everything is erased, and we don't get anything until the 1960s, the Black Panther movement. Can you give us more and explain this fallacy?
I'll give you an example. We have a collection called the Omnium Gatherum Collection, which is just a fancy way of saying miscellaneous. And it's a collection of single manuscripts, so maybe one document, two documents that aren't connected to any of our larger collections. And it has hundreds of documents from the 18th century, 19th century, slave bills of sale, slave birth certificates, just all manner of amazing items that talk to our history and tell the story of who we are, just in that collection. And that's just a random miscellaneous collection.
Wow.
I mean, that's not to say anything of the other 200 processed collections and hundreds of unprocessed collections that we have there. But that's the importance of a repository, because it preserves these stories, preserves these narratives, and it's the actual documents.
Right.
It's not being filtered by someone else for you. A lot of times you read history, you read the history books. Okay, that's great, that's cool. But when you have the actual documents there, that's the truth. This is it right here, written down from the time. And so it's not being interpreted by someone else for you. That's why I love archives, because it's the raw history, and you get to learn who people really are when you read their documents that they didn't think.
And what they're actually saying.
Yeah, they didn't think
you learn
anybody else is going to be reading it. So it's like,
So how important is it for African Americans to invest in places like Moorland and invest in their institutions like ASALH and invest in preserving their heritage and history?
Well, I think the important part is that if you don't preserve your history, that lets someone else be able to tell your history for you and to tell you what's important about your history. It's interesting. I was listening to someone talk about they went to go see Black Panther, and they were noting how the Black people were responding to things, and the white people in the audience were like, what? They were missing it, because there's something culturally that we all understand that others don't. And so if we aren't telling our stories, those things get missed or those things get misinterpreted, and then you hear it and not know, and then you're now retelling the misinterpretation.
Right.
Like, I was reading a post last night on Facebook. Someone was saying, should we change our last names? And because it came from the slave master. And I could see their point in questioning it. But when you look back to how important the last name was in keeping those families connected,
right?
That's why I say, you know what, I'm going to keep my last name, because it was important to my ancestors to connect them so that if they ever were able to find their relatives, they say, oh, okay, you're Washington. When you were sold away to another plantation, you kept the last name Washington. And so no matter where you went, that was your name. So then you find other Washingtons, and you're like, I'm a Washington, you're a Washington. Where did you get the Washington from? And you're able to
make those connections
because of the last name.
Yeah.
And so that's why it was important. That's why they kept it. And so I know that part of it. And, it's not necessarily sexy and radical and all that. It was practical.
It's practical.
But, that's the type of stuff that I love about Black history.
And that's one of the things I believe African Americans are somewhat turned off from their own history is because it's not sexy. It's not exotic.
Yeah.
It's not a narrative and that's sensationalized.
Yeah.
That you have people whose ancestors been here since the 1790s saying, "Oh no, we're Moors," and it's like.
Exactly. So I tell people I'm an African Americanist.
Right.
Because, some people say I'm an Africanist. I say I'm an African Americanist because I love African American history and the story of how we have survived everything that we've gone through.
Right.
Because, as I said to my students, because I try to, speak in their vernacular and things that they'll understand. So I say, Black people caught a series of L's in this country, and I say, we're still catching them.
We're still catching
them L's. Pow, pow, pow. But we still keep moving.
And we're in the fight.
And that's why I love Black history, because, it's just the story of how, how we have endurance as a people. And so that's why I love to study Black history. And that's what archives tell, that story.
So if you could tell anything to our viewers that would make them want to study more African American history, what would that be? Or what does that sound like?
What does it sound like to make them want to study more about Black history?
Yeah.
I would say, think about how we got to better example. A lot of people like the line from Black Panther that Killmonger said before he was killed.
Right.
I won't want to spoil it for anybody. I don't know when you're going to play this. So I won't spoil it, but I thought to myself, it bothered me when I first heard it, and then the more I thought about it, it bothered me even more, because I thought it was disrespectful to my ancestors who came here and endured slavery, because they went through so much, they fought so much to survive just in this country, and I think that their fight needs to be respected. And the fact that they didn't do what you thought they would do, the fact that they managed to survive, is in itself radical, and that's why I like to support theirs. So I know they weren't radical like Black Power and Raise a Fist, they were just surviving, but the fact that they survived is important, and that's the story that I like to tell.
I believe that's the spirit of African American history and cultures, that narrative of survival. And I understand the quote that you were saying. I had to explain it to someone also. I was like, in the more larger metaphorical and spiritual connotation, that a lot of the Africans thought that the afterlife looked like water. Mm-hmm. So a lot of them, when they did plunge over, they thought they would be transported into the realm of their ancestors. But then we have to think about those who endured and said, I'm not dying today. Exactly. I might die tomorrow, but not today.
Exactly. Today ain't a good day to die.
Today ain't a good day to die. Exactly. And it's in that I always like to say, our ancestors were some of the greatest individuals, because after 1865, you see this outpour, this whole drive to create a community, a heritage, and a legacy that we have adopted and that we have to preserve.
Exactly.
I would like to say thank you, brother, for sitting down with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, man, it's always a pleasure.
Oh, yeah, always a pleasure.
My brother.